All right, hello again. So now we're going to look at even more web design terms and conventions and words and concepts and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll be so much fun. You'll see. So here's some of the things we're going to look at. Talk about above the fold, resolution, usability, wireframes, prototypes, hero image, micro interactions, responsive design. What is all that stuff? These are all terms that people will use when they're doing web design and development. So you kind of got to know what they are, right? So above the fold, what is above the fold? Above the fold comes from the print industry. And above the fold means what the user will see in approximately the top of the first screenful without scrolling. So you don't really know what that is actually because there's so many different devices, phones, and different size monitors and laptops and everything. But you can. The general gist is you want to keep important items near the top of the page because the user might not see things farther down the page. So you don't want to put super important things like navigation or branding or the logo and all that and that kind of thing farther down the page because they may never see it, right? So that's the idea. If you think about it, probably none of you have ever read an actual newspaper, like you see in the movies. But the important headlines would go on the front of the paper, and then it's folded in half, and then the less important would go a little bit lower. So the most important stuff is near the top. That's the simple way to say it. Okay. So the next thing is resolution. So resolution is used a couple of different ways. Basically, the size of an image, how many pixels it is. So here you can see this image is 1920 by 1285, and that's usually in pixels. When we're talking about web design or screen design, we usually talk about pixels. When we're doing prints and things, we're usually often talking about points or inches, different units, but generally pixels for web design. The other part about resolution is how many pixels are there per inch. So you may hear the term screen resolution, and sometimes people will say 72 pixels in an inch. That number comes from way back in the dark ages when computers had very low resolution screens. I think that's from a Mac, and way back in like the 90s, maybe the 80s, way before anybody was born. So that is a number that you might see sometimes 72. But resolution doesn't really, that resolution, that pixels per inch, means how many pixels if you count it across and down. If you count it across, it'd be 72 pixels in every inch, and count it down at 72 pixels in an inch there. That really matters more for print, like I was saying. So you don't have to worry about it as much for screen. It's more the total pixels is what you're thinking about. These are the total pixels. This is every pixels, how many there are in every inch, if that makes sense. But you can use different resolution or different sized images and serve those or show those to your user depending on what kind of device they're on. So for example, you may see ways to use a high resolution image if somebody's on a phone. Phone screens have higher resolutions typically than desktop screens. So that does come into play sometimes as far as the resolution goes. Usability. So what's usability? Usability is how easy is and efficient is a site for a user. You obviously want to have a usable site, right? You want it to be intuitive, straightforward, easy to use, right? Why would you want to make a site that's hard to use unless you're trying to mess with people for some reason? You're a mean person, right? There's also usability testing, which involves testing with users to see problem areas or how they can use a site. So that's a huge thing, is right. You want to test, even when a site is already made, you want to test it to see if it's easy to use. So you may have seen this in another video. This is a fun site called Arngren. I think it's arngren.net. Maybe not the most usable website, right? It's chaotic. There's no real column structure. There's no white space separating elements. The links are all crazy in different colors and things and scattered everywhere. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a horizontal scroll bar here. So to see what's over here, you got to scroll sideways, which most people don't do. A lot of people have a scroll wheel, but they don't have a ball. Sometimes they do, but usually they have a wheel that goes vertical, not horizontal. So side scrolling is problematic as far as usability goes. So yeah, just be careful to be careful what you do. You want to make a site that's easy to use because people want to stay on it. If that's not, they're prone to leave, right? Another term you need to know is wireframes. Wireframes are sort of blueprints that you use to plan your content and your layout. So really what they show is what's on the page, where it is, and that's basically it. It's not really, it's the layout where the navigation, images, and text and other content is, but it does not include, usually, things like colors and fonts and graphics. Now, this is a low resolution, or not low fidelity wireframe. A lot of designers and a lot of design processes start with something like this, and then they'll start to add in things. They'll start to add in color. They'll start to add in specific fonts. They'll start to add real images. So then it goes from low fidelity, which we see right here, up to high fidelity, which you might see in a prototype or more higher fidelity mock-up, basically. But you do start from here, and it's a very valuable planning tool because you can do this pretty quickly in a tool like Figma, which we probably will use, and you probably have used, or you will use. And you can put things on the page and see like, okay, I need this much space for this, that much space for that. Here's my content that has to go in. Here's the links I have to go in, et cetera, and generally where things are going to be. Prototypes are sort of the next step often in the design process. So they're more advanced, sort of interactive wireframes, but they are more, they look more pixel perfect, meaning they look more like the actual pages are going to look. So prototype, they don't have to be, they can be low fidelity too, but they're basically wireframes that are wired together, or mock-ups of pages that are wired together, meaning I can click on the actual I can click on the navigation in the prototype and it actually does take me to these other screens. That's what all these lines are. This is from Figma. So if I click on this link, it actually goes to the screen. It's not a real web page, it's just an image, or it's something in Figma. It's a bunch of images actually. But it's to simulate what the actual site will be like. So the idea is to do a prototype and see how the users interact with it, see if you've done a good design, organize your information well, made it intuitive, just in using a prototype before you spend all the man hours to make it into an actual site. If you don't do these wireframes and these prototypes, at least wireframes, you're often gonna, if you just start making pages without thinking about those planning stages, you're gonna often end up redoing things anyway. There is a little bit of movement towards designing in the browser, meaning kind of coding and designing as you go. Some people do it that way, but most of the time it's going to involve some sort of wireframing and then prototypes and then an actual website. Hero image. So hero image is, the purpose of that is to grab people's attention and communicate something with them. It's usually a large image, usually near the top, and sometimes it'll have a headline or something and a call to action. Call to action is another term that means you want somebody to do something. CTA is the term. I should add that to this video, but I won't. So call to action is you're asking somebody, or you're asking the user to do something. So here's an example. Here's the Apple's website. This is a little bit narrow viewport here, but you can see they've got sort of large prominent images of there's this iPhone, and then there's a large prominent image of an iPhone. It's supposed to draw you in and also communicate what this is about. So I have no doubt that this page is about iPhones, and because I see a big iPhone in large text here, I see a little tagline, and I see a big picture of an iPhone or two. Micro interactions. So I threw this in because they're fun. Micro interactions are little delightful kind of interactions that happen as a result of a user doing something. So a user clicks on something. You may have seen them in Canvas. If you're using Canvas, if the AI overlords are letting us use Canvas still, and you submit your assignment, you may get a little confetti thingy, right? Maybe you've seen that before. So that's a micro interaction. It sort of rewards the user, gives them some feedback. Yes, I submitted my thing. Oh, it's cool. I get confetti because I submitted and did my homework, and I'm going to pass the class, right? So they can take a lot of forms, but they basically provide feedback in their reaction to some user interaction. So here's an example from Apollo Enterprises. So when you complete a task, you get a flying unicorn, it looks like. Awesome. Here's another example. So you click this submit button and it does a little interaction and a little progress, and then it's done, right? So it's telling you something, we're working on it, and then, oh, it's done, and get the green check mark. So those are micro interactions, and they really do add a lot to an interface, or not just websites, but apps, iOS apps, Android apps. So yeah, that's a micro interaction. Another thing you need to know about, which is kind of the standard now, it's been the standard for 10 plus years now, is responsive design. So responsive design is you basically have one design or one, let's say one document mostly, that will react and to different screen sizes and devices. It uses things like flexible grids, flexible or responsive images, CSS media queries. There's other ways to do it too, which we will see. You guys will do it, or you've already done it, depending on when you see this video. But here's an example of just some wireframes, right? This is what the page looks like. So often when I ask you to do wireframes, you want to do at least two, one for the desktop version and one for the mobile or the phone version. So you need to know what that site's going to look like in both of those cases, and then you're going to use some CSS tricks to format that page for those two different or multiple different situations, different devices, different device sizes, things like that. So here's another example. This is Boston Globe. So this is what the Boston Globe website, it's a newspaper, looks like on the desktop. It's got 3 columns. It's got a big ad for shoes up at the top. I must be getting profiled or something about shoes. And then here it's what it looks like sort of at a little bit narrower viewport. So it's gone to 2 columns. The image has gotten smaller, and it's now 2 columns. And this is also, it can fit and be usable on a different size device, like either a smaller browser window or a tablet or something like that. And then here's what it looks like on a phone, or close to a phone anyway. It's gone to 1 column, which is very typical, and then everything is just stacked. So the same page will be shorter on desktop, and then when it gets to mobile, it'll get long and skinny because everything just stacks up on top of each other. Let's see, we could show what it looks like in action here. Labor Day sale, I'm not doing that. So here's what it looks like, right? That's the desktop. If I get narrow, you see how this image changes size, and then eventually it'll pop to 2 columns, and then eventually it'll pop to 1 column. You can simulate this, again, if you haven't seen this already. If I right-click and go to inspect, this is in Chrome or Firefox. There's a little button right there. It says Toggle Device Toolbar. If I click on that, so let me do that a little slower. Right-click, inspect, Toggle Device Toolbar, which is that button right there. And now I can see what that looks like on a phone, and I even get a little touch simulation of a touch interface. That's my finger, I guess. That's that circle, right? Here you can change which device you're designing for. So that's looks a little bit strange on a. Ooh, that's a problem actually. I don't know, sure what's going on there, but that shouldn't be doing that. But it's not my site. But yeah, so that's responsive design. So we will be doing quite a bit of that if we haven't done it already, depending again when you're seeing this video. But that's it for this one. Trying to keep them a little bit short, but I will talk to you again next time.